November 7th, 2019 is called into session. Ms. Stowe, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Let's pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to serve this system, and we ask that you guide us in the decisions that we make tonight and always. And Lord, especially tonight, we ask that you be with Mr. Perkins as he begins his tenure as superintendent of this great system. We ask that you bestow on him your wisdom as he guides us through the next 3 years. For we ask all of these things in the precious and holy name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Stowe. I appreciate that prayer.
Yes, and before you go on to item B, I just want to again congratulate you and welcome you to the board table.
Thank you very
Look forward
much.
to working with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to great things that we're going to be able to do or continue to do in Madison County Schools. So with that,
Go ahead.
I recommend approval of the agenda dated November the 7th, 2019.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval for the agenda dated November 7th, 2019. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Item 2, Mr. President, board reorganization. I turn it over to you.
Okey-doke. Yes, every year at about this time, we go through a board reorganization for the president and vice president positions on the board. So I'm going to open up the floor to my fellow board members for any nominations.
I'd like to make a motion that we keep our current leadership, and I nominate Dave Weiss for president and Nathan Curry for vice president.
And I second that if we need a second.
We do.
You're nominating and moving on both.
Doing it all.
Okay, all right.
Sweeping
Well,
motion.
I'm flattered, and I appreciate that. I certainly hope. I know I talked with Nathan, and he too would be fine with that as well. So,
Ms. Stowe, your second is for both, correct?
Correct.
is there any discussion on the motion and the second for the reorganization?
I'd just like to say I think y'all have done a great job as we went through this process of selecting a superintendent. I know that complicated matters maybe you didn't know when you accepted this last year, how stressful your life might be, but
I think Angie had a crystal ball and something.
Well, I've still got it.
Yeah.
That's why you're still president.
but y'all have done a great,
Oh, what does that mean for Alan?
great job.
Thank you, Mary Louise. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I've kept all of that stuff, everything that I've done, everything that we did through the process of the appointment process. I've put it into a nice, neat folder on my computer at work, and we'll be transferring that over to the next person. So we have something in hand for that process. So if there's no other discussion, I'll go ahead and open the floor for vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, item number 3, Mr. President, we have a request to address the board.
Okay. That's correct. We have received a request to address the board from David and Natalie Herring. Are they here tonight, Ms. Herring? Okay. Your husband's not going to be joining you? Okay. I've read the letter that you sent and the information that you've provided. It is my understanding that you will be discussing student records that are considered confidential under FERPA. So at this time, the board will hear your comments in an executive closed-door session. So I will need a motion and a second to move into executive session to let Ms. Herring address the board.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second to move to executive session for the purpose of hearing a request to the board. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be back shortly, and we will resume our normal regular agenda after that.
Where are we going?
We'll go into the small conference room.
Okay.
It's prepared for you. Thank you. I see you're still in that mode.
I'm here to serve the pleasure of the superintendent.
Congratulations. Yes. Something we're not 49 then?
We are definitely not 49. Somewhere between 4 and 9 maybe, but not 49. Yeah.
Those are positives when we can find them, right?
What, this is, what is up there? Instead of board reorganization.
The board is back in session. Mr. Superintendent.
Okay. Informational items, number 4. Item number A, construction updates. Mr. Kazor.
Good evening, everyone. Quick capital projects update for our Madison County Board of Education. Feel free to ask questions if I don't cover something. Basically, I'm giving you some pictures, percentage of completion, and even contract dates. Just a little information there, but try not to bore you with the details. Buckhorn Culinary, just some pictures there. This is a self-performed project. We're doing it with subcontracting. Estimated time of completion, 60 to 90 days from now. 65% complete at this point. Just showing you we've got the grease trap in now. Cooler and freezer is installed. Hood and a lot of the duct work is inside now. So that project has began to move along as it should. The central school, this is not part of the construction, but we are going to be putting in the new sewer treatment plant. It's 85% complete now. We hope to tie that into the new construction on 11/25. And when we do that, we will be terminating the ATEM permit we have now for the sewage pond.
Lagoon.
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 I was trying to find a good word for that, but the lagoon. And then going here, the discharge point does not change, so it's an easy change through ATEM. Once this is complete, there'll be a fence around it, 8 foot tall with gates to keep the kids from trying to go up that ladder, okay? Central school dining room addition. This is part of the front view, car rider, the dining room and the stage area, 90% complete. The contract started, actual contract was signed on 12/12/18 with a substantially complete date of 10/2019. Estimated time, I'm giving it till December the 1st. We plan on moving we have 3 or 4 pieces of the existing kitchen equipment that we will move into the new area. We're doing training that week of Thanksgiving, so when the children come back from Thanksgiving break, they'll start using this new area.
Joe, is there any additional parking with this in the back?
Yes, there is. Actually, from right here where it says car rider view, right down through that area there's curbside parking. I would probably foresee that being the CNP staff parking in that area. Yes, ma'am. Actually, these pictures do not show up, but they actually had all of the rear part of it sodded yesterday. And then they put this up yesterday too, and I really like this. Welcome to Grand Central Station. I think that's a pretty neat little sign. But that's going right into the serving area in the kitchen. New market upgrades, 99%. We've already had our substantially complete inspections by the state, and the contractor is now working on a punch list. The contract date started September 2018, and they had 265 days from official notice to proceed. As you know, that center area there, used to the children had to walk outside to get to all the other classrooms. Now they're in a environmentally controlled and safe area, getting from room to room or building to building. The front has got a nice look, and so does the rear here. Sparkman Middle upgrades. Contract started January 23rd, 2019. 365 days from notice to proceed. They got the official notice to proceed April 1, 2019. So they've got, I hope they'll be complete April 1, 2020. This project's moving a little slower. I'm saying they're 40% complete. They're thinking 65, but we had some good meetings on this particular job today to try to get them back on track. That's the outside of the rear corridor. That's the interior, and of course, this is the new admin area up front and the entry, so that we can have that airlock area for visitors, so we can keep our visitors controlled going into the school system or school area. Sparkman High School, the Performance Arts Center, it is moving along quite nicely. Contract on it was April 2019. By contract, substantially complete date is July 31st of 2020. They are currently running at 26%. But this project is moving around very, very well. It's quite a project to walk around and look at. Front view and the rear view here. This area here to the left of the rear is the safe area. It's kind of the slowest to build. A lot of specifications in it that we have to meet. They've already began with all the bar joists, steel, even some decking. This shows you, here's your orchestra pit, and you see a little bit of the conduit here. The blue area, they were going to be pouring that day before yesterday at 1 o'clock in concrete. But like I said, this project's moving along very nicely. What their goal here, they were looking at trying to start building on the outside and get ready for the sky bridge over Ford Chapel. They've decided to concentrate on the main building. Let's get it in the dry, so when we run into winter time, they can put all their contractors inside and keep progress going, and then we'll get back out and start working on the sky bridge. Originally, they talked about maybe putting the sky bridge up around Christmas time, but we may be looking a little towards spring break, but we don't know that yet. I think it was a good call to do it that way.
Joe, real quick,
Yes.
with the Spark, I know it's been about 2 weeks since I've been inside, but have they fixed the problem with the grab-and-go line? I know the equipment was damaged when it was delivered to the grab-and-go line in the
Not
cafeteria.
as of yet. Still waiting on some equipment. I think there was some miscommunication in the serving line. There was that we need a serving line, and it wasn't. Should have been called a warming line. So something was ordered wrong, so we're waiting on that equipment. Okay. New Hope High. Obviously, we all know this has been slow coming out of the ground. We are getting we're getting to that point, guys. The picture on the left is what caught everyone by surprise. That is the live sewer main. It runs directly underneath the building that we were going to construct. We have sleeved that according to the engineers, and this here is the concrete. We're encasing it and sleeving it and going to build over the top of it. Still a lot less expensive than trying to relocate sewer around the building. Having it sleeved, if there is a failure in the future, we can pull that out or have a contractor pull that. It's a plastic sleeve, it's a plastic pipe that we can pull that out and put another one back in. The idea of having it encased in concrete is that it will keep the ductile iron intact, so we won't have any issues. So it's been slow coming out, but they are getting close to, once they start going vertical, the project should move on. Found a few other issues there. Contract date was May the 17th. They have 392 days, so we're looking at June 2020. Tennis courts, New Hope High School. I'd like to say that Craig Hill and his group are helping us. We're building a little pad out there. They're bringing dirt in, putting compaction in. It was unsuitable soil. We knew that going in. Craig's helping us with that. As soon as they get in, Hellas will start their progress on it. Monrovia Middle School, you can see the repairs going on. And Hazel Green High School, I think they had the worst courts in the system, but they have started out there as well. My goal was to have all the courts, existing courts, resurfaced by the end of November. Right now, we're still looking at that. It takes them about 10 days with good weather once they move on to the project. These two, they have a crew at Monrovia and they have a crew at Hazel Green. When they both wrap up, they're headed to Madison County High School to wrap up their courts and get those done. New Hope, I still would like to have that complete before the tennis season starts. Tennis season, they will start practicing in January, playing in February. But some of these materials are sensitive to cold weather. We need a 55-degree ambient temperature when they put some of it down. So, New Hope Elementary roof, 95% complete. We've not done the inspection on it yet. Notice to proceed started on 4/2/19, 150 days. The majority of all that work is done, and the underground, where running all the stormwater off of the gutters and downspouts, we've got all that in. New Market roof, finally, 99%. We've had the inspection on it as well, and they're working off of the punch list. That started back in June 2018, and they had a 120-day contract. But like I say, they're working on their punch list. We're waiting on some closeout documents there. And then Mr. Evans will be getting our insurance involved as far as getting that collected. Monrovia Elementary pod, the pod's been removed. This is a self-performed job as well. We've ordered new doors for where the old pod was, so they meet egress. What I still like there is remaining is the old building pad, the concrete, to getting it up, okay?
When do you think that'll happen?
I may could do some of that during Thanksgiving. Go out there and have a concrete cutter come out, cut it up in some sections. We still want to see what was causing that underneath the building. But with everything else, I've kind of put that off, but I can start that. I had thought about Thanksgiving. I just hadn't put anything in place yet for it. Okay. That's the end of my update. If you have any questions.
Have they completed the punch list on the stadium at Sparkman High yet?
Not 100%, no, sir. Yeah. Still missing a couple of gates, and we're still trying to get more grass to grow. Got gates in that monument.
Mm-hmm.
Supposed to be some gates in that.
Okay.
So we're missing that.
And then the grass around the track and field, the field event area?
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding we don't have all of the equipment for track meet, is that right?
That is correct.
If I'm not mistaken, that Chris Shaw has ordered that. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Shaw used some, I believe it was A&T money, and purchased that, so they have all the equipment they need to do regional meets. Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
And that was from the athletic funds or what?
From the A&T money, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That was allotted to the schools.
And they've got an area to store it, so it'd be secure as well. He and I talked about that earlier in the week, where they want to store their hurdles and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Any other questions I may answer? Just say anytime if any of you wanted to visit your project, if you'll let me know, I'd be glad to take you, walk you around, show you, or if you just need an update, just give me a call. I'd be glad to update you. Okay.
Thanks,
I've
Mr.
got one more year on the board, and
Yes,
I
ma'am.
really want to know what's underneath that pad at Monrovia before
Yeah,
we go.
it's kind of like.
Before you leave, I will tell you.
Thank
I
you.
promise.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Gazort. Appreciate you. Informational item B, financial fiscal year-end report. Ms. O'Bannon.
Okay, there we go. You should all have a PowerPoint. Can you hear me? I think Lauren sent it to you electronically as well, but if you want to follow along, I'm so glad we've reached this day. Gina and I are so excited about this day. So I have a few highlights for you, and I will keep it brief, but if you want to follow along, this slide, I didn't say this, we've had a really good year all the way around with the state supplemental funds that we have received, and the textbook monies we were able to flex. So those filled some much-needed gaps that we had in the school system. But this slide and the next slide actually is reflective of the fiscal year in a nutshell, these two exhibits. More than just a few transactions came into this, I will let you know that. But notice under general fund at the bottom, the unreserved fund balance of $19 million. We're going to break that down in just a minute, and you'll see on the second one. So that was our balance sheet. This is the income statement, and you can see the total at the bottom is total fund equity. So let's let's break it down. This is the summary report that I send to you each month. So this is September's, and we'll talk about that fund balance unreserved in just a moment. But first, let's look at the top, at the budget to actual and how well we did for both general fund and our special revenue funds, our federal programs primarily in the special revenue funds. But you can see revenues are reported at over 100% of the budget, more than we anticipated, and our expenditures are reported at 97.5% of the budget, tracking very closely to the budget. So you can all be commended, all departments, for a job well done with that. And the same for the special revenue fund types. Again, this is primarily our federal programs, and they were tracking very close to the budget. Now, back to the general operating budget with the year-end unreserved fund balance of $19 million. Let's see on the next slide. I prepared an analysis for you. This calculates to about 1.4 months, almost a 1.5 month operating reserve, or 42 days. And our 1 month reserve for our expenditures each month at the end of the fiscal year is averaging $13.6 million. I think I told you at the budget hearing we anticipate that being around $14 million at the end of 2020 because of the increase in the salaries. We also have our set aside for our debt payments with the Snyder project. Those are due October 1. We've already paid those, even though I'm still in last year. Then the reallocated, I mentioned textbook funds that were originally budgeted for technology in the classrooms. We were able to free up local funds and carry over about $385,000 for that. And then of our $5 million state supplemental funds, the ETF funds we talked about, we're able to carry over that much. Those funds can be carried over. We receive them in the summer, and they can be carried over until the next fiscal year, and we have to expend them throughout the next fiscal year, which is 2020. Some of the funds haven't yet been encumbered and spent, and that's why you see that balance. But however, we do have a budget plan for those monies. Also, I'll go into revenues in just a moment, but the excess revenues over the budget for sales taxes, I just plugged it all in there. That's primarily why we have this increase in the amounts over our reserve, our required reserve. It's very good. We'll talk in a minute about why we do need that little cushion. That's good for the school system and good for things that are not always, we can't plan ahead for. But let's move to revenues. Our property taxes, as compared to last year, you'll see about a 2% increase in each category, and a 2% increase was budgeted. For sales taxes, see around a 5.5% increase, 5.5 to 6, and we budgeted 4%. TVA in lieu of taxes, we budgeted level funding because we're seeing a slight decrease every year with the power sales with that property. So we average about $4 million from year to year, but we're still seeing a slight decrease there. So this is our overall for our major local revenue sources. And we'll take that property tax section, and move to the next slide. This is our 10 mil match calculation. As I've mentioned at the budget hearings, the state takes our financial statements at the end of the year. So for 2019, this will be our 10 mil match calculation for next year for the funding period for 2021. So it's based on our 4 mil tax, which increased to 4.4 million. Slight increase there that we talked about just a moment ago. Divide that by the 4 mills to the 1.1 million that you see. That's a value of 1 mil in our county, times the 10 mil required match. So our match will go from 10.9 to 11.1, and we're accustomed to that each year. As the revenue slightly increase, so does our match. And you already saw the 5.5 and the 6.5 on the previous page. Just a few expenditure highlights and comparisons. You look at the general operations expenses for personnel, and that's normal. That looks, let's just say that looks good, because you see the increase is 3 to 4%. However, that's due to the 2.5% raise in 19, and then the 4% raise that's already kicked in. That's why the budget for 2020, the difference there. Then local funds, personnel and non-personnel, again, it's like a 3% increase, and I equate that really to a normal, typical inflation rate, which if you look at the Fed, the rate they use mostly is 3%. So we're right in line with that, nothing alarming there. Our local funds for special education program codes, I wanted to bring that out where there, you see like a 4% increase there. And then for local funds for pre-K developmental programs, and this is the reason I mentioned, we do have some discretion with some of the funds that we're carrying over in fund balance, because there's so, in looking at the increases across the board due to so many unfunded mandates for special education, we can't predict what those costs are going to be from year to year. And nationwide, we're seeing an increase all across the country and all across the state of Alabama. We have no idea, as Ms. Stump can verify, that what our preschool, what's coming in, what the needs will be. Today, you probably saw we announced a new pre-K unit at Endeavor. That's not in the budget at 2020 because we didn't know the needs and the referrals that would be coming in. So if I had to say immediate needs today that we would have in expenses, it's for our services for our special needs students, and our deferred maintenance would take top priority for any of the monies that we have that haven't been budgeted up to this point from our fund balance. Let's look at our outstanding debt. Now remember, we refinanced the 2011 A and B. So this does not reflect our 2019 warrants yet because this is as of September 30th. We closed on those October 23rd. So those will come off and we'll add the 2019 where we were able to save $4.7 million. But this just shows you what our payments were for the year and what our debt outstanding looks like on each warrant. As far as the structure for the 2019, it will be very similar to the 2011 because we chose to take that savings up front rather than reduce our principal and interest payments over the life of the bonds. Tom Francis has already called me and Johnny Deal about the 2010 A and B. They mature next year. They said we might, if we closed on something in December, refinancing those, another $300,000. I just want to break it down, the numbers, get with the board and Mr. Allen to see, Mr. Allen Perkins, to see if it would be worth it. I want to know what the bond issuance costs are, and I just got the numbers yesterday, and I haven't had a chance to look at it. But they said the savings would be no more than $300,000 because the warrants mature next year. These are our local school bank loans. I gave you a breakdown of these at the budget hearing with the interest rates. If you need more on this, just let me know. You'll notice some of the high schools have used some of their A&T funds for athletics to pay extra principal. Dr. Hedden being one of those, and also Mr. Shaw. So we are able to pay some extra principal this year. So that's the balances as of September 30th, 19. We had the one new loan at Sparkman High where we converted the girls softball loan to a public note, and then Hazel Green High for baseball. Is that correct, Dr. Hedden? Okay. These are our interfund loans. Those are down too. A couple were paid off. So this is what we have remaining as of the end of the fiscal year and the purpose for those. Capital and maintenance. It was good to hear from Joe tonight because I was able to, follow-up as well on each one that's mentioned on the analysis as far as the completion dates and where we are with that. It helps to track the budget. But the first slide is the capital and maintenance district allocation funds that we send in the budget. It comes from the maintenance budget, the $125,000. Just to give you, you can read this later, an idea of how each school is using that money for 18-19, how they use that money. Those are closed out. We had a couple schools that didn't use it all, but after we send 3 reminders, we don't remind again. Okay? This is our BRAC bond analysis as of today. We went ahead and updated it through today instead of September 30. So you can see the resources available, the sale of land, and then this is an estimate of the interest in that account. The State Department tracks that, but that's a good estimate. It's conservative, so that's the funds available. The first section, you see completed projects with a subtotal of 14.7, and then the capital projects that Joe just went over that are ongoing. And so when it's all said and done, the remaining balance is $24 million, but of that, amounts due on projects in progress is 20.9, which leaves a difference of around 3.1, and we discussed that at the budget hearing as well. It's great to see most projects are coming in right at the budgeted price. The bleacher work that we did is slightly under, but there's a few projects that were slightly over, so it's really a wash. But as we complete them, I'll give you an idea, rather than just doing this twice a year, since there's a lot of activity right now. Every other month, I'll give you an analysis so you can see where we are and compare it to the budget. Okay, looking ahead to 2020, I always put my little tacky slide in here because it's fun. And but we're going to summarize with some of the school system happenings in fiscal year 2020. We will have textbook adoptions coming up for math in 2021. Mr. Evans gave me a schedule this week, and reading 2022, social studies 2023, science. So we've got those coming up. And we have a plan in place with Mr. Evans to pre-order, like at the end of this summer, pre-order for some of those textbooks. And we'll do that each year. And then, so we can use money that we'll have remaining this year after we paid the scientific learning fast forward. Remember, Mr. Solly presented that to you, and we use textbook monies for that this year. But the remaining balance we'll try to pre-order for the big adoption next year. And we're going to try to work it that way every year so that we will not use any local funds for textbooks. That's the plan, right, Mr. Evans?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think that's it. If you have any questions or you'd like to see something that I didn't go over, just let me know. Thank you.
Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Ms. O'Bannon. Informational item C, discussion of AASB delegates. Mr. President?
Okay, so as you know, with the winter conference coming up, the 5th, 6th, and 7th of December, we need to have delegates. We're authorized to have up to 4 delegates and an alternate. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it's my understanding, Sherry, you're not going to be attending? Okay. So as of right now, it's myself, Mr. Curry, and the 2 of you ladies that will be attending that. So I'm going to nominate the 4 of us as delegates. I may not be able to stay the entire time. That's fine. But I figured we'll just nominate all 4 of us as delegates and then send it on that way. We need to do a motion in a second on that? Okay.
That's the first night.
That's the first night, yeah. Yep.
Very.
I noticed they did not put an end time to that. It starts at 6:30, and they didn't put an end time to that, so I don't know.
Well, you know, they have horror stories. I mean, I've done it for many years now, but some of them that have been on boards longer than me talk about, you know, when there were really issues that were very controversial that they've debated into the wee hours of the morning. But that's not happened on my tenure, so.
Okay. So it'll be the four of
That's
us.
why there's no end time.
Gotcha.
I'll notify Jane tomorrow.
Okay,
and let
thank
her
you.
know. She asked me to.
Okay, administrative items, go ahead.
Administrative items. Item A, I recommend approval of September fiscal year-end financial statements as submitted.
Motion?
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of the September fiscal year-end financial statements. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item B, I recommend approval of the following bid renewal as submitted.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of the following bid renewal for pest control for the cafeteria and culinary kitchen. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item C, I recommend the approval of personnel items as attached.
Motion?
Second. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ken, I do have a question. Are we still looking for bus drivers? I mean, are we still actively pursuing?
We keep that constantly posted because for some reason there seems to be a carousel of open door policy where they just keep going around and around and around. We hired, at one point we were full staff and that lasted about 2 hours. And we're looking again, so it's just that I don't think we're ever gonna be fully staffed. We're just gonna constantly be hiring, but we definitely need to, we cut into the numbers that we had.
And what are we at right now? I mean, are we 4 or 5 empty slots? Okay.
We got some of the class this week, doing some training with Glenn Hubbard, and then I think the week before Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving week is actually a state class here. So we hope to have at least 4 passed, so we're back to having the right numbers.
Gotcha.
Some advertising, if you want to sign with us, we've had a lot of calls on that.
Yes, I saw the one outside Monrovia Elementary the other day.
You like that?
Yeah.
No, I think we have 17 phone calls regarding that.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Is there any further discussion or questions?
Is that the only sign you have out at Monrovia?
At the moment. We were targeted that area, that's where we needed the bus drivers first. I think Hazel Green's next. And what we're doing there, we can go and target the area, find the local residents, local people that might want to drive in that area. So, like I say, so far it's been promising, phone calls have been coming in.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Is our salary competitive with, say, Huntsville City for bus drivers, Madison?
Yes, competitive, yes. City of Madison increased theirs within the last 2 months, so they're $1,100 more than we are in the starting range.
Okay.
It is something that Mr. Perkins, Dr. Minsky, and I have talked about, and we will be looking further into. I think even Mr. Cubic has talked to us about it.
There's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Item D, I recommend approval of contracts for service with item 1 pending approval from the State Ethics Director as attached.
Motion.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of contracts for services with, what did you have down there?
With item 1 pending approval from the State Ethics Director.
We'll go with that. Any discussion? If there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item E, I recommend approval of supplements as attached.
Motion?
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of supplements as attached. Is there any discussion? If there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item F, I recommend approval of Mary Stump to negotiate and enter into resolution session agreement, mediation agreement, or settlement agreement in 2 special education complaints regarding a special needs student.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation that the board authorize Mary Stump to negotiate and enter into a resolution session agreement, mediation agreement, or settlement agreement in 2 special education complaints regarding special needs students. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, I think that concludes our administrative items. Next on the agenda is other business, and it's a unique situation transfer request and 2 hearings. We'll be going into a special session. Ms. Thompson, do you have a, we don't need a.
You don't need a
Okay,
certification.
you don't need the
for this.
certification, so.
You do have to vote to go into executive session.
That's correct. So I do need a motion and a second to go into executive session.
So move.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Any discussion? The only discussion will be is that we will stay in executive session. We will hear all 3 of the items in order, and then we will come back out here and render our decisions. So you are all welcome to stay. I cannot even begin to tell you when we may be back out here, but you're welcome to stay. All those in favor of moving into executive session, say aye.
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 Aye.